Welcome to Greater Good Radio Hawaii, where leaders inspire leaders. Greater Good Radio Hawaii is dedicated to social entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Evan Leong, and with me is my co-host, Carrie Leong.
Today's guest is Senator Daniel Inouye, who broke into politics in 1954 with his election to the Territorial House of Representatives. When Hawaii became a state on August 1959, Senator Inouye won election to the United States House of Representatives as the new state's first congressman. Senator Inouye is currently serving his 7th consecutive term in the Senate. He worked for additional jobs for Hawaii's economy and health and human services in rural communities. His other projects include affordable housing and the protection of America's natural resources. Please welcome to Greater Good Radio, Senator Daniel Inouye. Welcome to our show, Senator. Thank you for being here today.
It's good to be here.
So congratulations, because you've served Hawaii as senator for a little over 40 years, 44 years now. How do you feel about that?
I've been in since 1963, but I was in the House before then, from 59 when Hawaii became a state. And before then, I was in the territorial legislature. That's before you folks were born.
You've been in politics for so long. What is it that keeps you going, doing this type of work?
Well, I must say I love my work. I love the challenges, and they're almost daily. So there's no dull moment in my life. I would think that people who make money live a dull life. They have to spend a lot of money to make their lives exciting. But in my case, every day is an exciting day. And I mean that.
What made you interested in being involved in politics?
Well, when I was 17, Pearl Harbor was attacked. And I soon found out that I was an enemy alien because of a decree of the government. My parents were Japanese. And then, as a result, I could not put on the uniform of this land. Then finally, in early '43, they opened the doors and we volunteered. And I served in the military as an 18-year-old private, became a sergeant, then a lieutenant, and a captain. And wounded 4 times. And when I got out of the service, I felt that I should do something to help people. Now, this sounds high and mighty, but I meant that. After spending time in the military and watching my friends die and get wounded, I couldn't see ourselves going back to the plantation mode of life. And so, though I had planned to become a doctor, that was out of the question, so I decided to go to law school and become a politician, to the chagrin of my folks, because politicians were not highly regarded at that time. And in some quarters, they're still not highly regarded. But I went to law school, and after I got out, I became an assistant prosecutor for 1 year. Then I tried running for office, and I was successful.
When you first got back from the war, was it something that happened during that experience that made you clear about your path to politics and public service?
You know, after serving in the military, and when you realize that government made a lot of decisions, one of the greatest decisions is to go to war and have your sons and daughters killed. But there are other decisions that are made by government that affect all of our lives. Education, for one, health conditions, environment, etc. And I felt that as a citizen of the United States, I did my part, and I should do my part again.
So before deciding that you were going to enlist and then eventually decide that you're going to be a politician, when you were a young boy, was your path towards being a doctor?
Well, I was the eldest son in the family. And in my generation, that made a difference. My father was the eldest. My grandfather was the eldest. In fact, for 7 generations, I'm the eldest. So my grandparents worked in the fields in Kauai, and my father began his education at the age of 14. And so they looked upon me as their eldest son to do something about the family. And I was brought up in that sense, even from an early age, being told that never dishonor your family. You know, it's rather difficult to tell my son, never dishonor your family, but in my generation, it was a common phrase. Don't dishonor us. Don't bring any shame to us. And they were very pleased that I wanted to be a physician, because, let's face it, at that time it was an advancement in status. School teacher, doctor, lawyer, getting out of the plantation. But then when I was wounded, they were stunned, but I said, I'm going to be a lawyer. But I didn't tell them right off that I wanted to be a politician.
When was it that you felt that your parents thought that being a politician was okay?
I think my parents would have approved anything I wanted to be. They had that much faith, but they would have preferred that well, my mother wanted to be a minister. Because this is what happened. Before I began my surgical work and rehabilitation work, I had to face a panel of experts to determine my future. And after several consultations and examinations and taking tests, the panel concluded that, number one, I should be a teacher, if not a social worker, third, a minister, or fourth, a politician. And there's one thing in common: you deal with a lot of people. They said I would be very unhappy doing research all by myself in a laboratory, but I would be in my best element if I dealt with a large number of people. So when I told that to my mother, wow, she was enthralled, you know, because my mother has an interesting story on her side. She was an orphan at 4. She spent a little while at Susanna Wesley Home in an orphanage, and she was adopted by the bishop of the church. And so it was Bible reading and hymn singing every night for her. So she wanted me to be a minister.
Did you feel any tension between your religion that you were brought up in, I mean, that your family was, and...
I was brought up as a Christian, a Methodist. My father was brought up as a Buddhist, but my mother was very strict, and when my father says, may we go to lunch, he says, you want to take me to lunch? You get baptized first. She was a member of the Women's Christian Temperance Union, and they don't get any tougher than that.
What do you think is the most important thing your mom taught you?
My mother was always very generous with me, but she always told me that as the eldest son, you must sacrifice. You must never bring shame to the family, and whatever you do, do your best. And she said, never be unkind. She always said, there's always a tomorrow. I've always applied that.
Thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned for more on Greater Good Radio.